5, basically, we can say that in Act 5, like in Act 2, the two acts are divided into two parts, so that Doolittle is set in contrast to Eliza. In Act 2, we see how Doolittle does not care about making changes to his life, which is a contrast to Eliza's. But in Act 5, we see how both of them are changed. Which either whether it intended by them or not, both of them are quite changed. So I want to set a contrast of the two kinds of transformation, and also because today we need to deal with the sequel, or the so-called postscript, which Bernard Shaw wrote after the production of the film. And you know that the ending of the film is very different from the play. And then Bernard Shaw wrote this postscript as a response to people's tendency to only see romance out of the whole play, Pygmalion. So I want to include a bit of what's mentioned in postscript in our discussion of the two transformations. Okay. So there are 4 topics: the two transformations, the idea of Pygmalion transformation, creation, versus the idea of self-made woman, or how Eliza improves herself through education. And then in dealing with class mobility, we see that Eliza has become a lady, but then there are the so-called relapses she makes, as well as her father. They use slang. So this is to do with the class issues. And finally, we'll talk about Higgins and Eliza's battle of will. Okay, so because Higgins' discussion and the other two topics are related. So I move Doolittle's first to the beginning, and then we'll talk about the other 3 issues. Okay. Basically, this is a very interesting moment, very surprising, because when Higgins knows that Doolittle comes for a visit, he said, "Oh, this is a dustman." But then the maid said, "No, it's not a dustman, it's a gentleman." And when Doolittle comes in, he said, "Oh, you ruin me, destroy my happiness, tie me up, and deliver me into the hands of the middle-class morality." This is when we find out how Mr. Doolittle has been changed because of a silly joke of Higgins. Okay, so that's where there is another kind of comic reversal in the whole play. Okay, so these are the questions I asked of the groups. So which group is in charge of this question? Group 1 and 5. Okay, yeah. So why don't you come up here and give us your answers?
Okay, today I'm responsible for question number 1 and number 2. What do you think about Mr. Doolittle's transformation in Act B and in the postscript? In my opinion, I think Mr. Doolittle's transformation can be obviously seen on page 90. From 9:11 to 16, we can see that he emerged resplendently dressed, as if he were the bridegroom of a very fashionable wedding. In addition to his appearance, we can also see his transformation in his language, which is on page 92. He said that I will have to learn to speak middle-class language from you. Instead of speaking proper English, that's where you will come in, and I dare say that you done it for. And of course, on page 100, he has to get married. All these things can show Mr. Doolittle's transformation, which was caused by Higgins his silly joke to write a letter to Moral Reform Society, saying that he is the most original moralist. Therefore, I do think Mr. Doolittle is very unhappy to be tied to middle-class morality. For him, he feels intimidated and unwilling to participate in this class. So this is what I think his transformation. Okay, For question number 2, what does it say about Mr. Higgins and the issue of morality and class in Victorian society? For this question, I think Higgins is really not fit in with the Victorian society. For sometimes I think he is rude and impolite, although he is a gentleman. And as I know in Victorian society, people are known for their noble morality, they are humble and courteous. And of course, we know that in Victorian society, their science, culture, industry are very advanced. Due to the Industrial Revolution, as a result, I do think this is why middle class are so prevalent in this society.
You said that the middle class is prevalent because they are moral?
And for the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, the middle class are dominant because of the middle class, Industrial Revolution. And they earn money. And then because they earn money, they want to be also correct. And that's why they uphold a kind of morality. Okay, good.
Okay, I'm going to answer question 3. Do you agree with him that taking the money and being intimidated by middle-class morality is the only choice he has? No, I don't agree, because that accepting the money and being intimidated is the only choice he has. From my point of view, Mr. Doolittle is a man who values freedom to do what he wants. And the main reason why I don't agree is because I see some contradictions to what Mr. Doolittle originally says in Act 2 and his acceptance of the money in Act 5. I'm going to give some examples. In Act 2, page 50, Mr. Doolittle says, £10 is a lot of money. It makes a man feel prudent-like, and then goodbye to happiness. He believes that once a person has too much money, he loses happiness, which is a contrast to what the middle class believes in. But in Act 5, we see the changes in Mr. Doolittle once he accepts the money and a social position, and that goes against what he believes in. So I believe that he doesn't know what being an upper class man is like, and holds stereotypical views of it. So that's why he feels intimidated by the middle class morality. And like what Pickering and Mrs. Higgins said, I personally think that Mr. Doolittle can choose not to accept the money and social position. If he were really against the middle class morality, wouldn't he object outright? But he still accepted. So I think that's contradictory.
But do you know why he has to accept it?
I believe it's because of the money. Because in the end, people still choose to choose money over their own belief. Yeah.
Let's take a look at this paragraph on page 93. Yes, the first speech by Mr. Doolittle, a little bit below the middle, after the parenthesis. They've got you every way you turn. It's a choice between the skillet of the workhouse and the choppedness of the middle class. And I haven't the nerve for the workhouse. If you check my online PowerPoint, you'll find out the real spelling, the correct spelling of skillet and Charybdis. Now, skillet and Charybdis are two places in a strait. I think down in Mediterranean area. They are famous places for the journey of Odysseus. 你们讲那个奥德赛，他不是打完仗回家吗？他其中就经过这个很危险的地方。然后 one is a whirlpool and the other is I think a cliff. 就他经过那个峡谷的时候，一边是那个你要往一边走，就是走到那个漩涡里面；那走另外一边的话，就会撞到那个悬崖。Okay, so basically both places are dangerous places. Neither is a safe solution. So for him, one is to choose to get the money and become a middle class, and the other is to go to work in a workhouse. Because people have noticed him. You know, he could no longer be just a Rambo, you know, just an object worker. You know, he has to take a steady job, you know, in a workhouse or serve as a middle class. And of course, between the two, of being a middle class with money will be better. Otherwise, you know, the life in a workhouse can be miserable. You know, I think that's why he has to choose the middle class morality at this point. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. I'm going to talk about how Alfred's contrast to Eliza. You can see in the story that Alfred Doolittle doesn't actually transform into a gentleman totally. He's only seen as a gentleman superficially because he has the money now. But everything that he says, his manners, his accents, and his morals, it gives away that he is still in the lower class. And I think on page 92, on the left, he says that he's thrown... He says that on the third line of Doolittle's... he says that... second line, sorry. It's making a gentleman of me that I object to. So he is different to Eliza in that he is not totally voluntary on his side of being transformed into a gentleman, of being thrown into the middle class. And with Eliza, her transformation, she really becomes a lady. She changes everything that she does, and she learns from Pickering and Higgins. And her transformation actually frees her from what she was before when she was a flower girl. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
So one is totally transformed, you know, from the inner side to the appearance. And you think that Doolittle only changes his appearance?
Yeah.
And how about his speech, his language?
He still uses slang, and he doesn't use correct grammar. And he says that he suspected that Higgins only recommended him to change him into the middle class so that he would have to go to Higgins to take phonetic lessons so that he can earn money from him. So that was kind of funny.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I would like to also get you to read, because as I said, today we're reading the sequel and Act 5 together. So please take a look at page 115. This is when what happens to Doolittle gets explained. 115. The last 3 lines. So in a way, Eliza and Doolittle, both of them are disclassed. They are moved out of their own class. Okay, and here, rejected by the middle class, which he loathed, he had shot up at once into the highest circles by his wit, his dustmanship, which he carried like a banner, and his Nietzschean transcendence of good and evil. At intimate ducal dinners, ducal means of the dukes, 就是公爵的, okay. He sat on right hand of the Duchess, and in country houses he smoked in the pantry and was made much of by the butler. Made much of you see as being very important. Okay, so the butler 就是那个仆人，butler 事实上是所有仆人中间最重要的，我不知道怎么翻译管家是不是？ Yeah, 管家. Okay, made much of by the butler. So the butler will see him as being very important. when he was not feeding in the dining room and being consulted by cabinet ministers. So the politicians, aristocrats, are all welcome him in their parties. Okay, and because of these reasons, he cannot afford to support Eliza, because his money get used up in dressing himself up, in going to dinners, lunch, the parties, etc., etc. Okay, so this is what happens to Mr. Doolittle, and in a way, in Act 5 we see that he rises to the middle class, with the money given by the millionaire, but he feels that he's bound to middle class morality, and because of that, he has to improve his language and he has to get married. So at that point, he is intimidated. But the more ironic aspect of the play is that with this kind of social climbing, social climbing using your appearance, using your money, there's no limit. Like Eliza cannot be a real lady because she has no money. But Doolittle has the money and he has the wit. He's able to fit in like with his witticism and using the dustmanship as a kind of something trendy, like a banner to wave and to show off with, and then people welcome him, okay, because he's a miracle, etc. So in that way, later he even becomes one of the upper class, and that all of that shows how what Victorian society used to emphasize, and that is morality, earnestness, seriousness, maybe also virginity, etc. All the moral values that the middle classes get to emphasize are here kind of turned upside down. They are seen to be superficial. They are seen to be something just a matter of appearance. As long as you can speak well, as long as you are dressed well, then you are of the upper classes, or you are a nobleman, noble woman, etc. So I think that when I ask this question, Mr. Doolittle's transformation, what does it say about Mr. Higgins and the issue of morality and class in Victorian society? I think what I want to point out are two things. One is Higgins is rather irresponsible in giving this joke. He being irresponsible in creating Eliza, turning Eliza into a different person. His joke can also turn Doolittle into a different person. But then he's careless about the possible consequences. Okay, and then about morality and class, this is an issue I think I'll definitely test in the second midterm, because I think the issue of society is most of you are weak at in the first midterm exam. Very few of you were able to discuss like how the Irish society is different from the American South, or the New England small town America, which Sammy belongs to. Okay, there are different societies we discuss, but very few of you discuss that. Okay, as a kind of important factor in determining the characters' efforts or their limitations, etc. Okay, so I think I'll again ask this question, and this time is to do with Victorian society. Don't forget that the mid-Victorian society is also the climax of the United Kingdom as an empire. 英国在那个19世纪中的时候是不列颠什么日不落帝国 the empire which does not see the sunset. Okay, the Great Britain, and then also at its prime time, the Great Britain emphasizes a kind of social responsibilities and social morality. But once these virtues and merits get to be too emphasized, they become superficial, or they become constraining. This is not to say that their social seriousness is nothing good, but to say that it gets to be too exaggerated at some point, And then late Victorian society rebels against it. Okay, and then that's why George Bernard Shaw makes fun of this society of manners, to see that morality becomes an issue of manners. Morality is not anything, like from inside out. Like sometimes you want to feel moral because it's to be good, as a person, as a whole person. But here, morality has to do with getting married or not, or saying, using the word decent or not, etc. They are all appearances.